All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate everybody's time and coming to listen to us talk about how to recession-proof your sales team. Before we jump into any content, thought we'd introduce ourselves. So, Mark, if you wouldn't mind jumping to the next page so that we can talk about who 3D Agility is, and then we'll introduce ourselves.
So a little bit about us. I think the first thing that we want to make really clear is we come from the industry. We've had the experience. We've gone through different companies, different functions, and the point on the left is companies are under pressure to make some hard decisions about what they want to focus on, what are the strategic bets that they're willing to make. And the truth is, when you're talking about big leaps and new technology, it's hard, right? You're talking about teams that typically have already a full plate. Their calendars, Monday through Friday, are already packed. So it's hard to bolt something brand new on when you're already completely at capacity. And that's what 3D Agility is really focused on, is building partnerships with our clients where we foster some of that risk. We apply a lot of our know-how and understanding in the functions that we're focused on, and we really help drive the success and the deployment of some of the technologies that really mean the most. So where does that credibility come from? Brian and I have spent almost a collective of 40 years in the industry, primarily focused on the commercial functions. So sales, marketing, strategy, customer service, pricing, product management, and that insight across multiple industries, and then also kind of the collective OEMs that go into those industries really put us in a very different lens than I would say most companies, because we know your pain points, we've walked in your shoes, and we can really articulate the problems or the challenges that you are facing, along with the opportunities to kind of break down really complex challenges and ultimately solve them.
Excellent. So, one of the ways that we see or the ability to recession-proof your sales team is by being a problem solver for your customer versus always going into your customer trying to pitch your solution or your product. So jumping into this a little bit more, right? When you think about how do I do that, going deeper in discovery, asking the customer questions like, what are the pain points? What are the things that are really tripping you up? And then ultimately, not just selling or featuring the attributes of the solution or product that you have to the customer, but taking those pain points and issues and applying your attributes to them. This is how my solution or my product will actually address the concerns the customer has. In addition to that, it does give them that co-creating mindset that it's not just you, again, going in and selling to them. It's something that they are working together to find a solution at the end of the day. The other piece is breaking down the silos, right? For you as a seller, you need to break down your functions and internal silos across your organization for, operations, customer service, and so forth, because you don't want to be post-sale and not be able to deliver the product. You don't want to be post-sale and not be able to maintain it or service it via customer service. So it's important to break down the silos not only for yourself, but also for the customer. You want to make sure that if you're working with engineering, that you also are talking to the procurement teams and the leadership teams and getting to the decision makers across those different silos, so that way, when it comes time for actual award, you're not leaving a landmine for that engineering team or procurement team to trip over when they get to that next decision maker.
And that's a big one. We've seen that time and time again, where you lean in, you get an engineer or you get a change management person inside our organization excited about a new solution, excited about a new product, and then they immediately go to their stakeholders or the decision makers that sit across the aisle and are shot down, right? Or run into kind of blind spots. So how do you connect kind of those blind corners? How do you help facilitate that individual to be a change leader with inside the customer? Is huge. And that's one of the questions that we have, is to make sure that those KPIs are actually connected as well for your internal team. So if it's about creating new revenue, is engineering aligned? Are product management teams aligned with what that may result in as far as you know, compromises on gross margin and things like that. So really getting sticky across the horizontal will help speed up some of these solutions and make the teams more successful. I think the first point that Brian made is a big one too. Like, go deeper sounds obvious, right? Like, I want to understand the customer more. I want to get to uncover those pain points. The challenge that I would ask you and the teams are, do you have the time to do that? And one of the things we're all pressed with is we have limited time, 30-minute meetings, hour-long meetings. So traditionally, we want to get in front of the customer. We want to pitch a solution and get to a resolution as fast as we can. And that's not necessarily wrong, but the one thing that we've really positioned our company around, and we apply this approach, is being curious. And it definitely takes more time. It definitely takes a little bit more patience, but we very rarely go in with a predisposed or a conclusion of what we're going to sell. We really try to be curious of, what are your biggest pain points? What are your biggest challenges? What are the things that keep you up at night? And the discovery that we get back from that, which allows us, to the team and I, to really be creative around the solutions that we propose, are game changing.
And so then the next piece on how to recession proof your sales team is upselling and cross selling your portfolio to the customers you already have. I think a lot of times we always think that we need a net new customer in order to create new sales. The reality is you already have the relationship with the customers you're selling to today, but the likelihood that you're selling the entire portfolio is not reality. And that could be for a whole multitude of reasons. Maybe it's that your sales team is not strong enough to sell the entire portfolio. Maybe it's a very broad portfolio, and so there's going to be gaps in knowledge. But at the end of the day, it's about building that knowledge and confidence in your sales team to enable them to do just that. So things like sales playbooks and battle cards are critical, not just for how you're going to sell and the sales procedures and the battle cards for the products. You also need to have one for the flip side, because that's for the customer. You need to have those battle cards and sales playbooks coming from the customer in, right? Because you need to understand where that customer plays, what markets, what products are they interested in, and then what are you selling to them today, and where are the gaps. It helps you identify those gaps, and how do I then start to say, okay, I'm selling this solution or this product. I have all these other ones that are associative sales. I need to start linking those, right? And then I also need to be communicating and breaking down those internal silos again. And how do I then effectively sell them and effectively deliver them and maintain them?
And that's just another key point. So these themes are not new themes. The questions that we're trying to have the participants be curious about is, how well have we deployed some of these approaches? And when you talk about a portfolio, we have clients with a portfolio of maybe a few hundred parts to clients that have hundreds of thousands of parts. So when you think about training and upskilling and facilitating kind of that knowledge base around different sizes of portfolios, it can be pretty overwhelming. And the tools for which you've deployed to support that approach are vital. But the biggest question is then, once you've deployed kind of that approach, is how effective are you, right? What does great look like? So when you say, oh, I need the team to portfolio or sell the portfolio, what does that mean? Is that 30% of your projects have some type of mix of portfolio or product lines? Is it 50%? Have you really looked with your team to say who's doing it really well, and have we taken the time to understand what are the opportunities to improve? Many times from the initial conversations that we've had, you'll see pockets, whether it's regional pockets or customer type pockets. You'll see sales professionals be really, really competent in maybe one or two product lines, but then kind of that next level adjacency gets a little grayer. The next level gets a little bit grayer. And then when you ask the questions of, why, sometimes the teams struggle to really come up with an answer and articulate, Is it access? Is it customer relationship? Is it understanding the stakeholders that you have? Is it training? Is it some of these other assets that need to be deployed? Those are all great questions. So what we're trying to bring to light is, maybe you have a lot of these things in play, but our argument is that if a recession or if there is some type of slowdown in the economy around the corner and that pie is shrinking, these capabilities and these assets need to be even more fine-tuned. You need to be able to make sure that you're in a position to take a larger piece of that pie because competition is going to be ramped up.
Mark, couldn't agree more. I mean, to me, you said it, right? You might have sales playbooks in play. You might have battle cards today in play, but what is the ROI for the sales team on them? Are they just there or are they actually usable and effective?
Yeah, spot on. Spot on. So with those two themes, and there's a lot of different approaches that you can take to validate and make sure that your sales team is in a good spot if things do get a little bit tougher. But the bridge that we're trying to connect is really around technology and data. So you have some tried and true approaches to really differentiate your sales team, but the trends that we've seen really in the last 10 years, I'd say, especially around data, is insights. Collecting data is not a problem. There's a ton of data out there. And there's been a lot of time and money spent on creating insights around that data. But the challenge sometimes is the way I interpret data is going to be different than the way Brian interprets data. And that can be kind of proliferated out across your sales team. So if you have people or team members looking at the same sheet of music, but everybody has different interpretations, are they focused on the right priorities? Are they driving the right initiatives? And that can be challenging. So that's really one takeaway that we've seen personally, but also something that echoes across a lot of the conversations that we're currently in is, hey, I got plenty of data. I don't really know what to do with it. And that's what we're trying to supplement is, what if there was an application to actually give you recommendations, right? Not just give you insights, but give you recommendations on what to prioritize, what to pursue, what to recommend. That's kind of the next step that we see in technology is having some type of application that can collaborate and work with your teams to make them more efficient, to give them a little bit more confidence on products, maybe that they're not experts in yet, but as they start working with them, as they start learning them, they'll be willing to kind of get to the plate more often and take that swing. So that's a big part of kind of the tech play and where we see this transition.
Yeah, and Mark, data is critical and the output of reports is, vital to making business decisions. But a lot of time data is looking in historicals and there could be anomalies in there that help have you arrive at the wrong answer, sure. Right? So you need a way of navigating that data with intelligence to ultimately get to the right answer for you for whatever that is and whatever the business case is.
And I think that's so important because if there is an economical shift, right, we have been in kind of this hockey stick out of COVID for many years now, right? So are your models correct? Can they articulate a downturn or a slowdown? Do they focus on kind of projects that might be potentially net new? That was one thing that a lot of our assumptions and a lot of our modeling never did is, well, we have a new application or we have a new customer set coming in. It was hard to get our arms around understanding what we should recommend and how do we create account plans for those types of opportunities. So again, that data is crucial, but how and where you use it, I think, is the pivotal question.
Yep.
So with that, one of the things that we've developed with inside 3D Agility is an AI platform called Peregrine. And again, this was really an idea that we've had over spending many years in these functions, many years in these industries of, what if I had a tool that could help me do fill in the blank? You can see on the right-hand side a few of those applications or a few of those use cases, but we've really focused on the commercial teams, sales, customer service, engineering, product management. to basically unlock value that we know is there, whether that's additional conversion. So typically, sales teams don't have a challenge kind of establishing a pipeline, but where a pipeline comes down to actually converting it and getting the win over the goal line, sometimes that's difficult, right? So, what if you had an application that maybe you're converting 15% today? What if you could convert an additional 5% of that pipeline? What is that worth? So it's no additional time as far as hunting. That's just converting what you can already see. That's pretty interesting. Customer service, these are the soldiers that fight probably harder than most functionals day to day for every client for every company, and they're under a tremendous amount of pressure. There's a lot of attrition in this function. There's a lot of frustration and unknowns in this function. So, what are the tools and applications that you can provide those team members to be more efficient, find answers quicker, be more self-service versus relying maybe on horizontal functions to get answers? This is a big one, and for most of our clients, this is the front line, right? This is where a great customer service experience starts. So this has been a big priority to focus and help these individuals. And then engineers, we're going to show a quick demo, and Brian will walk through that in a moment. But again, engineers are going through this shift where they are inundated with choice, and how they go out into the market to research product or find the pieces of the puzzle that they need to make a great application, a great device, is hard. And sometimes as you start that search, you think that you found kind of that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, only to be set back multiple times. And that's one observation that we have. It seems that iterations are creeping up, like the amount of time for development cycles is extended and the amount of iterations is creeping up. So how do we unlock value for the engineers to be able to consume a vast amount of data in a relatively short form in an unbiased way? It's not a salesperson selling them data, right, or selling them a solution. It gives them an environment to be curious anonymously, but also across the horizon to really get recommendations and insights that might be valuable for them.
Yeah, and Mark, for me, the biggest takeaway is that AI is an enhancing tool. It's not, the stigma is AI is a replacement, but the reality is it is an enhancement to the function in which you're laying it upon. So sales, customer service, engineering, e-commerce, you name it, right? It is never meant to be a replacement, but it does enable enhancement to make that function more potent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's run through a quick demo, super quick video just to show the potential of what Peregrine can offer. And Brian will give you a voiceover.
Excellent. Yeah. So this is just a quick example of how Peregrine could work, right? So from an inside sales customer service view, or even engineering, you're looking for a 10 amp connector. It throws it into Peregrine. You get results. So you've got product details. You got pricing. You got inventory out there. There's web links for who might have said inventory. You need more detail on item one. There it was, right? So it gives you the adjacent componentry as well, and ultimately where and how to find it.
And that example was really built out for a very specific use case. The question was, can you get market insights? Our team is really desperate to understand stock levels, price points, availability. As Brian mentioned, those links could either go back to your home site, directing them for maybe a point of purchase, or could go out into other resources inside the web. But just a myriad of options. And that example alone basically condensed 15 websites into almost an immediate search. So the power in that and the amount of time that it's giving back the engineers to find fast, make a decision, and pivot is kind of breakthrough.
Yeah. So, ultimately, when you think about how do I recession-proof my sales team, and giving them the tools that they need and arriving at the right answer for the customer base, it's a tool it's Peregrine that can give you those answers and help your sales team be more recession proof.
All right. So we talked a lot. We threw a lot of ideas and kind of our observations out there. For the individuals that jumped on, we'd love to hear, does anything resonate? What impressions do we have that are right? Which ones are maybe a little bit different for you? We'd love if you were curious and had any questions for us. All right. So knowing that it's open forum and maybe everyone's a little bit shy, I'd say there are kind of 3 or 4 questions that Brian and the team and I constantly get presented with. So we'll just do kind of a little bit of role play in some of the questions that we've been faced, and hopefully they resonate with what's on your mind.
Perfect. So, ownership of who is going to make the decision within the organization, who owns the AI budget, who owns the data management. Mark, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think this is the question on most C-suites and most executive teams' minds right now, is that ultimately someone has to own it. And right now, understanding how and where it fits is hard because these applications, I would hope, are being custom and built for a specific use case, not just kind of peanut butter spread across organizations. But whether the HR team wants to be a champion because they found an application that suits them well, or maybe it's from ops or supply chain, they found one. What's happening is everyone's kind of running in different directions. So for many companies, there should be a strategy. There should ultimately be an ownership of some of these things. And typically you want to follow the money. So who owns the budget, who's controlling kind of the wallet for these projects and these spends is a big one. Ultimately, for depending on the size of the company, we like kind of the CEO or kind of that C-suite to have a major role and stake in a lot of these decisions, because they're the ones that can start to break down barriers too. It's not just about accountability, but when you think about some of the change required to really drive these projects to success, knowing that you have support from that C-suite or there's an executive champion backing it is huge.
Yeah, and Mark, just a, I guess, cautionary tale, if you will. You may have identified the owner that you are actively selling to or with, but the reality is a lot of times there could be layers of ownership behind that owner. They may be the champion and they say they're the owner, but the reality is there could be business units behind them that pull some strings and or some other functions.
Yeah, great call out. And that's something that we've worked through a few times, is help developing kind of that change management approach, making sure the messaging and the value proposition is aligned for each piece kind of in that ecosystem or in that decision tree. But that's a great call out.
All right. So question 2 is data security. It's a big one.
It is a big one. And I would say it's a big one that gets a lot of hype on the news, and it's definitely top of mind. I think sometimes, though, it's a little bit of a scapegoat where, it comes up and it makes everyone nervous. But I would say the opportunity is to really assess kind of the protocol and the data security that you have in place today, and then how would an application like this change it? In many cases, it's a simple enhancement. Whether your data security is completely homegrown, or if you're in cloud and you're trusting a lot of those providers to enhance or deploy some of those protocols, it's very much a bolt on. Now, what I will say, it also depends on your data set. So for the example that we showed today, that was mostly kind of like internet-based, curated. It was widely available data. So the protocols and the safety measures to protect that is going to be very different than if you deploy Peregrine with inside an environment that's dealing with IP or things that are secret or proprietary to your company. Those can all be dealt with very, very easily. And again, a lot of the providers we work with Azure, AWS, Google, those safety measures can be met pretty easily.
Excellent. All right. So the third question we receive a lot is harvesting of data, the cleansing of data, and then producing an output from that data?
So that's kind of a loaded question again, but um, so the data piece is huge, and like so often, the data that you put into the models will dictate how well the model works. So those are some of the initial discovery sessions that we work with our customers, is to really understand your existing data set, and how would you grade it, how would you rank it, is it relatively clean, or is it kind of like the skeleton in the closet that no one wants to talk about, where it's directionally correct. Within some of our solutions, we've actually built the ability to cleanse and clean data, so that's one huge advantage, where either if the application is a truly market-based data, where we're harvesting and we're focusing on data maybe that you don't own, or if you're a recipient of other people's data where you don't have the control or the ability to affect the origin of that data, these tools are absolutely huge for you, because in many instances, your data set will actually be better than the originator of that information. So that's a big one. I think the other side of it too are just the constant upkeep of data. So making sure that you have the mechanism in place to not just fix it once, but to make sure that it can adapt and amend new data, whether that's new product releases, or if your company is into mergers and acquisitions, how do you bring that data set in and make sure it's at or above grade of your own, is huge. So that's something that's definitely top of mind for many, and I think that we've found some really interesting ways to solve it.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, for everyone that's joined and taking the time out of their day to hop on and listen to us, we truly appreciate it. If anything has sparked interest that you were not comfortable in asking in this forum, please shoot Brian and I an email. We're happy to connect and brainstorm, or get to any more additional details that you might be curious to understand. Appreciate your time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.